Share this with. Find out the details of the major sports coverage on offer across BBC television, radio and online this week. Visit our live guide for direct links to all our live sporting coverage, including text commentaries, while BBC Sport app. Users can also set event reminders so they never miss a moment of their favorite sports. All times GMT, then BST from Sunday, 25th of March. Times are subject to change. The BBC is not responsible for any changes that may be made. For more details of forthcoming coverage, visit the specific sport page on the website. Coverage on BBC Red Button can be subject to late schedule changes. The Formula One season returns with the Australian Grand Prix live on BBC Radio 5 Live, and follow action from the Women's Super League across the BBC Red Button and BBC Radio 5 Live Sports Extra. 0:30 to 11 o'clock. Cricket, New Zealand v England, First Test, Day 4, BBC Radio 5 Live Sports Extra 5:30 to 8 o'clock. Formula 1, Australian Grand Prix, Race, BBC Radio 5 Live 9 o'clock to 10 o'clock. Sports Week, BBC Radio 5 Live 13:55 to 1600 hours. Football, Chelsea Ladies v Reading Women, Women's Super League 1, BBC Red Button and online 13:45 to 16:15. Football, Arsenal Women v Charlton Women, Women's FA Cup Quarter-Final, BBC Radio 5 Live Sports Extra 1500 hours to 1700 hours. Rugby Union, Leicester Tigers v Wasps, Premiership, BBC Radio 5 Live 1705 to 1805. Sport Relief, The Best Bits, BBC One 1730 to 1800 hours. At Home with Colin Murray, BBC Radio 5 Live 1800 hours to 1930. Football, 606. Phone-in, BBC Radio 5 Live 015 to 045. Football, The Women's Football Show, BBC One 145 to 11 o'clock. Cricket, New Zealand v England, First Test, Day 5, BBC Radio 5 Live Sports Extra. Follow live cricket commentary from the final day of the first Test between New Zealand and England on BBC Radio 5 Live Sports Extra and watch live action as Northern Ireland host Iceland in the U21 Euro Football Qualifier on BBC Red Button. 1:45 to 11 o'clock. Cricket, New Zealand v England, First Test, Day 5, BBC Radio 5 Live Sports Extra 4:30 to 5 o'clock. Formula 1, Australian Grand Prix Review, BBC Radio 5 Live 1830 to 1940. Football, The Women's Football Show, repeat, BBC Red Button, repeated 21:45 to 22:55, BBC Red Button, 1900 hours to 2100 hours. Football, The Monday Night Club, BBC Radio 5 Live 1940 to 21:45. Football, Northern Ireland v Iceland, U21 Euro Qualifier, BBC Red Button 2100 hours to 2200 hours. Cricket, The Tuffers and Vaughan Cricket Show, BBC Radio 5 Live 2200 hours to 2230. Flintoff, Savage and the Ping Pong Guy, BBC Radio 5 Live. Listen to BBC Radio 5 Live football commentary as England host Italy in a friendly match at Wembley, and catch up with all the latest rugby league news on the Super League show on BBC Two and BBC Red Button. 1300 hours to 1345, Rugby League, the Super League show, BBC Two, repeated 1900 hours to 2150, BBC Red Button, 2000 hours to 2200 hours. Football, England v Italy, international friendly, BBC Radio 5 Live, build up from 1900 hours, 2200 hours to 2230. 5 Live Football Social, BBC Radio 5 Live. BBC Radio 5 Live Sports Extra brings you commentary as Chelsea Ladies host Montpellier in the second leg of the Women's Champions League quarter-final, and Mike Costello and Steve Bunce preview the weekend's big fight between Anthony Joshua and Joseph Parker on BBC Radio 5 Live. 1900 hours to 2100 hours. Football, International Football Review, BBC Radio 5 Live 1900 hours to 2105. Football, Chelsea Ladies v Montpellier, Women's Champions League, BBC Radio 5 Live Sports Extra 2100 hours to 2200 hours. Tennis, 5 Live Tennis, a follow-up on the dad who thinks his daughters could rival the Williams sisters, BBC Radio 5 Live 2200 hours to 2230. Boxing, boxing news and interviews ahead of Joshua v Parker, BBC Radio 5 Live. Listen to live Super League coverage on BBC Radio 5 Live Sports Extra as Wakefield Trinity take on Castleford Tigers. Plus on BBC Radio 5 Live, Mike Costello and Steve Bunce discuss the heavyweight title fight between Anthony Joshua v Joseph Parker. 1900 hours to 1930, 5 Live Sport, BBC Radio 5 Live 1900 hours to 2200 hours, Rugby League, Wakefield Trinity v Castleford Tigers, Super League, BBC Radio 5 Live Sports Extra 1930 to 2030, Boxing, Preview for Joshua v Parker, BBC Radio 5 Live 2030 to 2200 hours, Golf, Preview for the Masters, BBC Radio 5 Live 2200 hours to 2230, Football, The Premier League Show, BBC 2, 2315 to 2345, BBC 2 Wales and BBC 2 NE, 2230 to 7 o'clock, Cricket, New Zealand v England, Second Test, Day 1. BBC Radio 5 Live Sports Extra follow live commentary of St Helens Super League match at home to Wigan Warriors on BBC Radio 5 Live, as well as Scarlets v La Rochelle in the European Champions Cup and Newcastle v Brive in the European Challenge Cup, both on BBC Radio 5 Live Sports Extra. 14:30 to 15:15, 5 Live Sport, BBC Radio 5 Live 15:15 to 17:30, Rugby League, St Helens v Wigan Warriors, Super League, BBC Radio 5 Live 17:15 to 19:30, Rugby Union, Scarlets v La Rochelle, European Rugby Champions Cup, BBC Radio 5 Live Sports Extra 1900 hours to 21:30, Football, The Friday Football Social, BBC Radio 5 Live 1930 to 21:30, Basketball, London Lions v Newcastle Eagles, Barrel, Connected TV and Online 1945 to 2200 hours, Rugby Union, Newcastle v Brive, European Rugby Challenge Cup, BBC Radio 5 Live Sports Extra 22:30 to 7 o'clock, Cricket, New Zealand v England, Second Test, Day 2, BBC Radio 5 Live Sports Extra live commentary on the European Rugby Challenge Cup on BBC Radio 5 Live Sports Extra as Connacht take on Gloucester and Edinburgh face Cardiff Blues. Plus, catch the Premier League action from Crystal Palace v Liverpool and West Ham v Southampton on 5 Live. 5 o'clock to 5:30, Boxing, 5 Live Boxing with Costello and Bunce, BBC Radio 5 Live 12 o'clock to 1300 hours, Football, Football Focus, BBC 1 12:30 to 14:30, Football, Crystal Palace v Liverpool, Premier League, BBC Radio 5 Live, build up from 12 o'clock, 12:55 to 1400 hours, Football, Semi-finals, FA People's Cup, BBC Red Button 12:55 to 1500 hours, Rugby Union, Connacht v Gloucester, European Rugby Challenge Cup, BBC Radio 5 Live Sports Extra 14:30 to 17:30, Football, Final Score, BBC Red Button 1500 hours to 1700 hours, Football, West Ham v Southampton, Premier League, BBC Radio 5 Live, build up from 14:30, 16:25 to 17:15, Football, Final Score, BBC 1, Final Score from NI, 1700 hours to 17:15, 1700 hours to 1800 hours, Sports Report, BBC Radio 5 Live 17:30 to 19:30, Football, Semi-finals, FA People's Cup, BBC Red Button 17:40 to 19:45, Rugby Union, Edinburgh v Cardiff Blues, European Rugby Challenge Cup, BBC Radio 5 Live Sports Extra 1800 hours to 2000 hours, Football, 606, Phone-in, BBC Radio 5 Live 22:30 to 0 o'clock, Football, Match of the Day, BBC 1 22:30 to 7 o'clock, Cricket, New Zealand v England, Second Test, Day 3, BBC Radio 5 Live Sports Extra 23:55 to 1 o'clock, Football, Semi-finals, FA People's Cup, BBC Red Button. You can view BBC Sport output as well as listen to our radio sports programming on the BBC iPlayer. The BBC Sport website is available via desktop, mobile, tablet and app, giving fast and easy access to the live stream, text commentaries, news, reports, schedules, videos, as well as highlights of the day's action. The BBC Sport app is available free on Apple and Android devices. National and regional variations have been included in this list where possible, but please check your local listings for more detailed information. Share this with